Hello, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV. Just going to look at some downwind sailing technique and positions, sail settings on the Hobie 16. We're going to start off by looking at using our hierarchy of what's important while we're sailing. So the first thing that is the most important is the course that we're going to steer. On the downwind sailing, we're going to determine our course by looking at the wind indicators on the front of the boat. On our 16s here, we're using videotape on the front of the boat because it's quite big, it's easy to see, and it is abundant. So on the downwind course, what we're looking for with these tapes is to have the tapes flying straight across the boat at 90 degrees to the boat. So if they're too far back, it means we're sailing too close to the wind, so we need to turn more downwind by pulling the rudders towards us, which will bring it back. If they're too far forwards, like this, it means we're sailing too far downwind, so we need to turn the boat up towards the wind by pushing the rudders away to bring it back to across the boat like this. If we get a gust of wind while we're sailing, what will happen is the boat will start to go faster. As the boat goes faster, we're going to create more wind coming from in front like this, which is going to bring the wind on the boat, which we call the apparent wind, further back. As that happens, we need to turn the boat more downwind to bring the apparent wind more across the boat as it was. And in reverse, if the wind drops and we start sailing slower, it's going to come more like this, so we turn more towards the wind, and there we go. So that is our course in a nutshell. We're just using the telltales on the front of the boat to determine our course. Okay, next, crew positions. So in the really light winds, the crew position, the helm on the boat is going to want to be as far forwards as possible, which maybe, so this is in very light winds, the helm can be really quite far forwards, so sitting here, or in really light, like light airs, when there's very little wind at all, only just enough wind to be moving through the water, we can go even further forwards, so we're sat actually on the deck of the boat, getting really far forwards, and the crew will be directly opposite. So if we're sat here, the crew will be on the other side in exactly the same spot. If we're sat here, then the crew will be in exactly the same spot on the other side. Important when you're sailing the boat downwind is to have the ability to steer, so do make sure that you can steer. So because of the traveller cleat, you might just have to lift the tiller extension up a little bit to be able to steer, but there we go. This is how far forwards we want to be on the downwind point of sail if the wind's light. As the wind starts to pick up, what's going to happen is the front of the boat is going to start to come down a little bit, so we don't need to be as far forwards. We're still going to be helm and crew on opposite sides of the boat, but we're just going to move back a little bit, and then as the wind increases more, moving back. So this is when we've kind of been single trapezing upwind, then a good downwind position is going to be around here, and then as the wind picks up further, so if it's getting towards double trapezing conditions upwind, where perhaps we've even been depowering the boat, then we're just moving back, and we're just going to judge this by looking at the leeward hull and trying to keep that as flat as possible, but never with the chance of sticking the bow under the water. So we're just coming back more, and then when it's really windy, we're going to be sat right at the back of the boat, either with the crew sat next to us as close as possible, or just opposite on the other side of the boat there. We've got a good gust going through there at the moment, so the boat is rocking a little bit. We'll just let that go down a bit before we continue. So those are the crew positions. Generally, helm and crew as close together as possible, forwards and back. All right, which leaves us with sail setting on the downwind point of sail. we'll start off with the jib. So with the jib, we're always going to want to have the jib traveller all the way out by pulling it here. With the jib travellers, generally only have one all the way out at any time, so the one that you're using should be out. If you have them both pulled all the way out, then it means you're going to run out of jib sheet, because the jib sheet has to go this extra distance. And then in the really light winds, as the crew, if we're sat this far forwards, the crew can actually pull a bit of jib sheet through and actually hold the jib out. So like this, so we're getting this nice curve in the jib, which is going to give us as much power as possible. And in fact, we can still hold the jib until the wind starts getting a bit stronger. So even when we've moved back into this position, we're going to hold the jib out again to keep this curve. We're watching the telltales on the jib. If the telltale on the inside is lifting, can we make it do that? Yes. Or swirling around, then it means it's too loose, so we'll pull it in a bit. If the one on the outside isn't flying straight back, like now, it's just stuck a bit, then we're going to let the jib go forwards or out until that starts flying all straight back. And then as the wind picks up and we're coming back more, we'll take it by the sheet, again just watching the telltales. And then as we come across to the windward side of the boat, we're still watching the telltales. And as the crew, it's good to get used to the action of sheeting in, uncleating the jib sheet, and then cleating it again, just so that you definitely can uncleat the jib sheet at any time. Okay, so that leaves us with the mainsail. So with the traveller, we want to have the traveller generally about halfway from the tow strap to the end of the track, maybe a little bit more if it's particularly windy. And then with the main sheet, we are doing the same as with the jib sheet, and we're just trying to keep the telltales on the mainsail flying. So in really light winds, this means that we want to have the sail as loose as possible, pretty much, so you can't even reach the main sheet, especially if you're at the front, because we really want to have the sail out as far as possible, because that's where it needs to be. As the wind picks up a little bit, so once we've getting to the stage where we've been single trapezing, then we'll start to bring her in a bit. So we've got this kind of angle, and we can check the telltales on the mainsail. At the moment you can see the inside ones aren't flying, so we'll pull it in a bit until they are. And then so in the gusts, when the boat goes faster, we can bring the main sheet in a bit. If we sail into a lull and the boat slows down, we'll just let the mainsail out a bit. And then when we start getting into the really stronger wind stuff, where we've been double trapezing upwind, perhaps depowering the boat, we can let the traveller out all the way to the knot. So this is good, so the traveller is out 3/4 of the way there, and then we'll play the main sheet from this position. If we get a gust of wind and we need to bear away, what we'll do as we bear away is we'll ease an armful of main sheet. As we bear away, that will help to take the pressure off the bows. If at this point the crew can ease the jib at the same time, that's going to help as well. So if it's really windy, you're sailing downwind, you get a gust of wind, ease the main sheet and the jib sheet, bear away, and then once you're on your new course, then you can pull it in again. Okay, but the trick with dealing with the gusts when it's windy is by reacting to the gusts as early as possible. If you leave it too long with the gusts, the boat might have already started to go bows down, and that's when it can get a little bit exciting. So respond to the gusts as soon as possible. You should always, in the strong wind, be looking for the gusts. So we'll be looking around here, looking for the gusts, also having a look behind. If you see a big dark patch coming towards you, then be ready to turn the boat more downwind for the gusts. That's how we're going to deal with that extra pressure. Okay, so if we're moving on to the jibe, so jibing, the best time to jibe the boat is just after a gust, because that is when we will have turned more downwind, which is going to reduce our jibing angle. Also, we're going to be going into the jibe with more speed, which is going to take the pressure out of the rig. So this is in light wind or in strong wind, but for different reasons we want to do it after a gust. In the light wind we want to jibe on a gust because it means we'll be able to carry more speed through the turn and not be pretty much stopped when we finish the jibe. So going into the jibe, we definitely want to have the boat sailing on this proper catamaran sailor's broad reach with the wind coming straight across. We're then going to move into the middle of the boat first, just checking by looking behind us that the wind is still in the right direction, and we're not turning yet, but we're putting the tiller extension to the new side, and then we'll take the tiller extension round behind the main sheet and push, and then we're just going to guide the main sheet across. By that point the wind will have come in the other side of the sail, and then we'll settle on the new side of the boat and look forwards as soon as possible and continue. There we go. If the wind has been particularly strong, as the mainsail comes across, we can tweak the boat back downwind a few degrees to take the sting out of the jibe, and we'll have a better chance of not sticking the bows in. Okay, so that's all for now on the downwind sailing. I hope this has been useful. Hope you've enjoyed this video and it's answered any questions that you had about downwind sailing generally. It is a very general overview of downwind sailing on the Hobie 16. Thanks again to all the patrons of the channel who've helped to support me to make these videos. If you want to get involved, just click on the link below. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the boat from capsizing here on the beach, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.